From Central Asia to Sub-Saharan Africa to the deserts separating the United States from Mexico, cross-border migration is rising on the aggregate, and it is creating political challenges in host countries around the world. Are there best practices and policy options to handle asylum seekers, refugees, and economic migrants? And how can countries identify one from the other? This was the focus of a new study commissioned by Bertelsmann Stiftung. It's a complicated issue, especially as differentiating between refugees and economic migrants is becoming increasingly difficult. And when both refugees and economic migrants seek to establish residence by claiming asylum, this places heavy stress on asylum systems in host countries that were never intended to process so many people. Two developments in particular have contributed to this interlinkage between refugees and economic migrants. First, in recent decades, the causes of refugee flight have changed from individual or group-specific persecution to a flight from general violence or overall economic collapse in an origin country. In other words, the fundamental difference between a refugee and a migrant itself has blurred. Secondly, refugees and migrants are increasingly using the same irregular migration routes. For example, an economic migrant from Nigeria and an Eritrean refugee might well use the same dangerous, and often deadly, route crossing the Mediterranean by boat to get to the EU, and both might seek asylum upon arrival. Both groups end up lumped together, getting in any way they can. So what can receiving countries do to better cope with these growing mixed migration flows? Let's start with the refugees. Without more safe and legal refugee pathways into the EU in the context of a common European asylum policy, the current chaos will continue. Critically, the study also calls for more support for the initial arrival countries, as overwhelmed arrival countries, many of whom have their own economic problems to worry about, have taken to simply ferrying people on through towards other countries. In addition, the programs for the acceptance of refugee quotas from initial arrival countries, the so-called resettlement programs, must be expanded. In terms of economic migrants, the study finds the regulations for employment-related migration are often either too restrictive or very complex, and generally ineffective. Perhaps one reason economic migrants have pursued irregular methods of entry. Simplifying the process could lead to more orderly economic migration of the kind that could benefit host countries such as Germany. So, what are the ways to make mixed migration work? And how can all sides benefit? Check out the full study online here.